Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us as we bring you more of our in-depth coverage of the trial of the decade now underway in Kentucky, the murder of Crystal Rogers, right here on WHAS 11+. I'm Doug Proffitt from WHAS 11 News. Stunning claims right out of the gate this morning. Allegations we haven't heard over these 10 long years that the mother of the chief suspect was the original mastermind to get rid of Crystal, and then 2 weeks later it happened. Well, let's pick up that storyline with our Shay McAllister, who's been in that courtroom down in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where the trial's being held. No cameras allowed in the courtroom. But Shay, you have a seat right there in the courtroom. Was Rosemary Houck there when all of this was being thrown out by the prosecutor, Jim Lisowski?
Doug, no sign of Rosemary Houck during this entire week. Of course, we have heard that she's in Bowling Green. She just hasn't been in the courthouse, which could mean she's not allowed to be because she could be called as a witness later on. But no, we haven't seen her just yet. So here's what we heard about Rosemary Houck. A couple of weeks before Crystal went missing, there will be evidence presented this week that Rosemary Houck had a conversation with Danny Singleton. Danny Singleton was arrested very early on in this case, back in 2015, 2016, on perjury charges. During that conversation, the prosecutor said Rosemary Houck approached Danny to ask if he can find someone to get rid of Crystal. Danny tells her if you have enough money, you can get anything done. The prosecutor specifically said Danny didn't agree to do it. It kind of ended there. But then, of course, 2 weeks later, Crystal's missing. Another couple of things that were very interesting that came out in opening statements on the prosecution side today had to do with what happened when they went to the farm. We learned for the first time today that Crystal was under the impression that this was a romantic, kid-free night between her and Brooks. Brooks had called her earlier in the day saying that he had something special planned, a surprise date night. And this was a big deal because the relationship was very strained at this time. A friend of Crystal and Crystal's cousin both testified, explaining that they talked to Crystal earlier in that day on July 3rd, and she was really looking forward to the surprise night. She didn't know what to expect. They did end up at the farm, and at the farm that night, they say that Crystal didn't leave. I'm going to bring in my colleague now, Alexandra Goldberg. She was sitting in for the defense side of the opening statements, and she was able to hear a little bit more about what was said on that part.
Right. One theme that we heard during prosecution was use common sense. Well, on defense, it's a little bit different. We heard the theme of pressure. Right off the gate, the attorney for Brooks Houck, Steve Shoring, said pressure, pressure, pressure on this case. He said that certainly the media is suspecting Brooks Houck. He named local media, state media, national media, documentaries, podcasts for sort of, setting the scene that Brooks has been this default character in this situation because law enforcement hasn't been able to fill in any of those gaps. Here's another quote from Shoring. He says, quote, because of this pressure, it became a very dangerous case, a case that is dangerous to our system of justice. He says that facts are being replaced with suspicions and theories. And he says that both Houck and Joseph Lawson have been charged with horrific crimes that they did not commit. Now, moving a little bit further along in the defense's opening statement, we heard their storyline. This is something that we've heard before, that Crystal, Brooks, and Eli went to the Houck family farm, as we've been mentioning, got home just after midnight. Brooks went to bed first, and then Crystal was gone in the morning, so with her car as well. Another main point that we heard here was about the cooperation of Brooks. Steve Shoring says that Brooks has been highly cooperative, that he allowed law enforcement to do searches for his home and his car without search warrants, and that he's been really cooperative during this, which is something that we haven't really reported in full yet. I want to move on to some other really interesting points in the defense opening statement. This is where they poke holes in some of the items that prosecution has been talking about in their opening statements, and also just sort of painting the picture here. Steve Shoring said that you might hear Brooks Houck did not go on search parties. He said, well, why? Because the Nelson County Sheriff told him not to. Second point here, Steve Shoring says the Commonwealth says Brooks Houck had tinted his truck windows. And you heard this during the prosecution, right, Shay?
Yeah, so during the prosecution, there was mention that just a few days before Crystal disappeared, Brooks tinted his car windows in an attempt to make sure that when he was leaving the farm and Crystal wasn't in the car, no one would be able to see it.
Right, and the defense had a rebuttal to that. It said the truth is their son Eli had a significant eye condition, making him sensitive to light. So there's sort of, where their storylines and their arguments there are squaring up against each other.
Doug?
Shay, Alexandra, thank you very much. And the top legal analyst on this case is WHAS 11's own Nick Mudd, who is a Louisville attorney. He has been breaking this down. And Nick, of course, you know every single one of the attorneys there, including the prosecutor. I want to start with the Rosemary Houck bombshell that came out today. The mother of Brooks Houck, of course, a grandmother as well. How is it that she's not charged if they are calling her basically the alleged mastermind behind this killing 2 weeks before it happened?
I mean, they came out and called her a co-conspirator today.
Unindicted co-conspirator.
Unindicted co-conspirator. But, I mean, they confirmed it in an opening statement here today and laid it out. I would assume, based on the evidence they have, they didn't feel like their case was strong enough to charge her. But to not charge her and say that in court is a pretty bold statement. Now, I know Jim Lisowski, he is kind of the godfather of prosecution. I mean, he's mentored probably every lawyer in the room, mentored myself. I mean, he's as good as it gets. But to come out and say that, without having her charged is a pretty bold move, but they have to have some sort of evidence to back it up.
So apparently Rosemary Houck thought that her son could do better, didn't like Crystal Rogers. And according to the prosecutor, Jim Lisowski, today, had a plan in her mind to get rid of her.
Right.
Is that the way you see this laying out in the? Is that why aren't we seeing Rosemary Houck in that courtroom?
Well, I mean, that's what they threw out, so that's what they're going to have to go on. As a prosecutor, you can't throw this theory out. You're the one to wear the white hat. You can't tell lies when you get up there. Not supposed to lie anyway, but you can't tell lies as a prosecutor because the jury's going to hold it's your burden. They're going to hold you to it. There has to be some sort of evidence they're going to do to tie that in. But that being said, the fact that they came out and said that, she has a Fifth Amendment right not to testify if they're stating that she is a co-conspirator here. And I certainly believe, should they try to call her as a witness, she's going to assert that right. She's going to have a lawyer and going to say, look, I'm not testifying. And even what's more important from a legal standpoint, if a prosecutor knowingly calls to the stand a witness who has a Fifth Amendment right that they believe is going to assert the Fifth, that's grounds for a mistrial, Doug.
At the end of this broadcast, 30 minutes, I'm going to ask you who won the day. We're going to because you've heard the defense attorney, Steve Schroering, and you've heard the prosecutor's side as well. I do want to talk to you about how this is turning into becoming more, as Shay has been using in her reporting, a family affair. The net is widening. In the Steve Lawson case, we heard Nick Houck's name a lot.
Right.
Now zeroing in on Rosemary. What's this approach about?
Well, I think they're trying to give more of a motive here. Now, as I've stated before, prosecutors don't need a motive, but I do think they're trying to give a reason why this happened and give the jurors something to grasp onto, because I assume they're going to give a timeline moving forward in the next 10 days or so of events and fill in the gaps. But they do. It's nice to have a why this happened and give the jurors some sense of a purpose for why they're all there for the murder.
Well, let's talk about a motive. Do you buy the motive that it was Rosemary, the mom, who just didn't like Crystal, and it's time to kill her? I mean, do you buy that as the motive, and then Brooks just pulled it off in a 2-week period?
I certainly want to hear more about that, because that seems a little extreme when you hear it. I mean, the gut reaction is, whoa, we've never heard that, and that seems a little intense to come out, especially to say that in opening statement, when she's not indicted. However, I am curious what the prosecutor's going to do to fill in those gaps to show that, and what evidence they're going to have to prove that, because that seems like a bold claim.
How about Lisowski's contention that this was all under the cloak of a surprise date, that Brooks Houck had convinced Crystal to go on a date, and that's how he lured her into her death?
Well, I think what he was doing there is trying to set up the timeline of why Brooks would have been with Crystal that night. We did hear from one witness today who stated that Crystal thought she was going to have a kid-free night with Brooks and that she was excited about it. I think there was a witness who had saw Crystal earlier that day at Walmart. So I think they're kind of setting the scene, filling in the gaps with the witnesses to kind of show that we do know that Brooks was with Crystal that night, and certainly he was the last person that saw her alive.
Prosecutors went on to say that the romantic date obviously didn't happen, but they went to the Houck farm, which has been sort of the focal point for us over these 10 years. A lot of searches of the Houck farm where they believe that's where Crystal Rogers was killed. But again, this is a circumstantial case.
Absolutely. So, you know, I mean, and one of the big things I think that was pointed out in an opening statement by the defense was, look, Brooks has been cooperative from the beginning. He let search the farm without a warrant, search his home without a warrant, search his car without a warrant, and he gave a statement without an attorney.
Does that kind of thing connect with the jury?
I think it does.
It was sort of the obvious, it was sort of a common sense approach by Steve Schroering, trying to appeal to the jurors with a plausibility of what Brooks Houck may have been thinking or doing. But does it really connect since we really don't know any more details?
Well, I do think it's funny that you say that he tied in that common sense approach, because Jim Lisowski says in an opening statement, you know, use your God-given common sense here, and then we have Steve Schroering stand up and say, of course, common sense was he didn't do anything wrong. He let them search all they want because he's innocent.
So out of the gate, attorney Steve Schroering, who again is working for Brooks Houck, said this case is built on assumptions, not evidence, because of pressure on law enforcement and the explosion of publicity. That's right out of the gate. Do you think that's a theme for the next 2 weeks?
I think absolutely. I think what we're going to see is a lot of witnesses testify who's given multiple statements, and they're going to show that those witnesses have told multiple stories. And the theme will be, look, they've been pressured by law enforcement to come in here and testify against Brooks Houck, when that's not really the truth of what they're stating.
Okay, the very specific detail about the tinting of the windows. But he got this car, the tinting of the windows, early so that nobody would be able to see the passenger side.
Right.
Dive into that. I know that fascinated you, that kind of detail.
Well, you know, when I heard that, I thought, wow, that's okay. That certainly sways the prosecution. But I tell you, Steve Schroering attacked every single detail of the Commonwealth's opening statement, and he had an explanation for that. Hey, Brooks's child had eye issues. That's why he went and got the windows tinted.
One of the lines that we're reporting tonight from the attorney, Brooks Houck was the answer to a mystery that they couldn't figure out.
Right.
This doubt is going to be a major theme.
I'll tell you, the biggest doubt, Doug, is something we already heard from John Snow today. Crystal's car is found on the side of the road, but John Snow testified that it had a flat tire that was believed to have happened while she was driving. I think what the defense is going to hint at here is, look, this is a young lady who's out. You know, she gets a flat tire, she's pulled over, and essentially someone comes to help her, and potentially she's kidnapped or harmed in some way, something of that nature, and that we don't know. And we also know that there are hairs that haven't been tested. And further, the prosecution does not have DNA in that car really linking other people with the case, especially on the steering wheel and things of that nature.
John Snow, who was the lead detective at the time. Okay, we're going to talk, I know you want to talk more about the cell phone evidence that came out, which is also something that's caught your attention. Let's go back to Shay live in Bowling Green. And Shay, Crystal's daughter, Kylie Fenwick, took the stand today and testified that Brooks had actually talked to her about adopting her. What happened there, and what did we learn about the night that Rogers was first noticed to be gone?
Very emotional testimony from Kylie. She was the very first witness on the stand today. She was wearing pink in support of her mother. She described how she was just 14 years old when her mom disappeared. They were very close. They talked every single day. And in fact, for the first few months that her mom and Brooks were together, she really liked Brooks. She said that Brooks talked about officially adopting her, about giving her his last name, and that's something that meant a lot because her biological dad isn't in the picture. And so to have a father figure was really meaningful to her. But she said everything changed when the son that Crystal and Brooks had was born. When he was born, Kylie said the relationship started to change between Brooks and Crystal, and her relationship with Brooks started to change. She said very early on there, Brooks was making decisions that were all about that little boy. He decided that Kylie and her sister would be sleeping in the basement, an unfinished basement. She mentioned seeing centipedes crawling next to her once. She said it wasn't good and she wasn't happy with it. Well, the day that Crystal went missing, she was staying at her grandmother's house. She tried to get in touch with Crystal the next day. She wasn't able to. She talks about multiple text messages, multiple calls that go unanswered. And then eventually she starts calling Brooks and texting Brooks asking if he knows where Crystal is. She said those messages went unanswered as well. And when she finally did go home, hoping to find her mom back at home, leaving her grandmother's house, the house was dark. She said she opened the bedroom door that Brooks and Crystal shared, and Brooks jumped up and said, your mom's not here. And Kylie said, well, where is she? And Brooks told her she's out with a friend. And that was it. And Kylie had no reason not to believe that. But of course, the family was growing suspicious at this time. After Kylie left the stand, they called a friend of Crystal's and then Crystal's cousin. And both of those women were describing conversations on July 3rd, the final day before Crystal goes missing. They described talking to Crystal about her plans for the evening. And Crystal was really excited about this date night. She said it was a surprise. It'd been a very long time since Brooks and Crystal had a night away from their kids. But all of Crystal's 4 kids had places to be that night that was prearranged, with the exception of the son that she shares with Brooks. And Crystal didn't know what it was. She didn't know where they were going to go, what they were going to do, but she was really excited about this opportunity to spend some quality time with Brooks. The next witness to take the stand was Detective John Snow, and I'm going to bring in Alexandra Goldberg now because Alexandra was in the courtroom taking the notes on John Snow, who of course we've heard testify before. He testified in the Steve Lawson case. He was the lead on this investigation for the first 4 years before the FBI took over.
Right, and it was when John Snow took the stand to where we really learned about those final hours of Crystal Rogers, how she spent them before she went missing, and also what the first evidence was sought after. So there's 3 main exhibits here, videos that were played to the jury and in the courtroom that I'm going to talk about. This first one, John Snow says that when Crystal Rogers' car was located on the Bluegrass Parkway, of course, her purse was found in there. He took some photos of what they found in Crystal Rogers' purse. Included in those photos were some receipts that show she went to Walmart earlier in the day at 4:30. So they were able to identify the exact time she was at Walmart speaking with her cousin, right? And they were able to pull surveillance video from Walmart cameras of her walking throughout the store into the parking lot. And that video was showed to the courtroom. So that was about 4:30, right? So just a couple hours before Crystal and Brooks had planned to go to the family farm. The other exhibit that was shown to the court was that initial interrogation between John Snow and Brooks Houck from July 5th. The video lasted about an hour. It was a long video. The jury watched it, and some of the questioning that Shane Young had asked John Snow revealed some answers for us. So Snow says that at that point they didn't have anything to verify. She went home. Also verified that Brooks claimed he got 0 calls that late night, but Snow later confirmed that Steve Lawson had called him. Says Houck claimed it was Rogers' idea to go to the Houck farm. These are points that we've heard discussed over and over again during these opening statements. The third exhibit that we saw as John Snow was taking the witness stand today was, I'm just, again, looking at my notes to make sure I get these quotes verbatim. We saw also some interesting weather video that when it was presented to the jury and the courtroom, you could see it was very clearly raining all day, which brings up some of the questions that, prosecution have been asking in the courtroom. Why would Crystal want to go to the farm in such bad weather? You could see it was clearly raining in these videos, but you could also see Brooks' truck at 4:30 near the Houck family farm. So now we have confirmed that Brooks did visit the Houck family farm earlier that day as well.
Doug?
Okay, Shay, thank you very much. Before we let you all go, one last question for you, Shay, because you went out of the gate today running fast with this information. And again, no cameras allowed in the courtroom, and I can see you holding that great notebook of yours with the meticulous notes, so thorough. What do you expect for tomorrow as they get started?
Well, we do know that Jon Snow will be taking the stand again. The jurors will see a 90-minute video. Then we'll see other witnesses take the stand as well.
Doug, they listed more than 50 potential witnesses when they were doing jury selection. And we know that this trial is slated to take 10 days. So we've got a lot of evidence to hear. We've got a lot of people to hear from. And of course, this is now this week, next week, and the week after. So a long ways still to go.
Okay, thank you very much, Shay and Alexandra. I know you've got a long day again for tomorrow, so we'll let you all go, and we'll finish our broadcast here with WHS 11 legal analyst Nick Mudd, who is also in contact with many different sources, and you also happen to know everybody involved in this case. Something you wanted to spend some time on, and this comes from earlier reporting by Shay and Alexandra. By the way, I don't know if you all know about our blog. It's on our website, WHAS11.com. It is put together by our journalists covering this and our digital journalist, Joseph Garcia. It's excellent. You follow it. I follow it. That's where I get information through the day. It's nearly hour by hour, or when Shay and Alexandra can come out of the courtroom and report their notes. This is really the old school way of covering a courtroom before the cameras were allowed in the courtroom. Of course, this judge has denied it. The defense also offered a different explanation as to why the Lawsons' phones, Steve and Joseph, pinged near the Bluegrass Parkway. Attorney Schroering said Steve Lawson's girlfriend at the time hid a shared car from him on a road near where Rogers abandoned the car was found. He said the two Lawsons went there to get that car. Their phones were picked up by cell phones on the Bluegrass Parkway because they were the closest, Houck's defense argued. You are fascinated by the cell phone information. For the past year, you have told me you really believe that's going to be key in this case. Explain this. How would you pick this apart?
I think that what the defense is going to do, they have to face it head on. It's there. It's the scientific evidence in the case that is available. I suspect what they're doing is giving a plausible explanation of why those phones hit off the cell phone towers. And that makes sense. It's something they want to attack out of the gate. They want to get in front of it, and they want to let the jury know, what kind of indoctrinating the jury of what to expect. So the prosecution, to kind of take the sting out of the prosecution when they try to start taking these phone records and narrowing down locations, times, of things like that, where the Lawsons were, where Brooks Houck was, where Crystal was, etc.
Part of the testimony that came out today, some of the former detectives talking about how they immediately went to the Houck farm and they were looking for something that had been burned there. Police say they did find a large burn pile, but said it was mostly just construction material.
Right, and I don't make much out of that. I mean, certainly they were searching, but what they found made sense, and Brooks was involved in construction, and that it seemed to be confirmed when they saw that. That's all that was available. So.
Even a fascinating detail that our reporters posted at 5:21 tonight, our time, that the former detective, we're talking about Jon Snow again, also spoke about the dozens of tips police have received since Rogers' disappearance, which have been everything from she's working at a Waffle House in Rhode Island to she's working at a nursing home. But then he had to go on and say the obvious, that they've been unable to verify whether she even made it home on July 3rd, 2015.
Right. And, usually defense lawyers especially, and sometimes prosecutors, depending on the tip, will say, look, those are tips. They're not people that testified. They're irrelevant to this case. All that matters is witnesses who've seen, heard, or experienced a situation, or what is the testimony you need to consider.
So explain once again, can you get a murder conviction? And again, Brooks Houck in this case is the only one charged with murder. Joseph Lawson, tampering with physical evidence, and conspiracy to commit murder, just like his dad, Steve Lawson, earlier. Can you get a conviction without evidence of a body? And is that why the prosecutor came out so strong yesterday, right off the gate, to let everybody know, hey, jury, we don't have the evidence you might think that we have not revealed yet?
It is extremely difficult to get a murder conviction on a case without a body, because you don't have a body, you don't have a cause of death, you don't have a weapon, you don't really have the where and the specifics of how someone passed away, which usually are the things that you use to build your case against someone. And we don't have any of that here. And I think that's why the prosecution came so strong, not just an opening statement. They came out in jury selection. That's one of the first few questions they asked and said, hey, this is a homicide without a body. Would you be able to convict, essentially? And so, they've owned up to it right away. They weeded out the jurors who could not. And it's something that one of the rules of prosecution is you gotta own the bad facts up front. You have to. If you don't, you lose all credibility with the jury. And I think the prosecution did a good job of owning that single, which is the single worst fact for them. And it's a very bad fact. It's a tough case to prove. Certainly, they owned it right out of the gate.
So, if they are guilty, and we don't know that yet, the jury is going to decide. They have the final say in this, of course. So far, on the face of it, they did a good job of getting rid of Crystal Rogers' body. But then we see the FBI doing those massive search.
Right.
They're looking at records, data, information. Everything about our lives is known in an easy Google search these days, Nick. So is this going to come out? Is this going to be the next bombshell, what's in those records? Or do we think they were also good enough to keep anything about this case out of those many electronic records?
Well, I don't want to say who's guilty or innocent. That's up to the jury to decide. But certainly, nothing that I've seen so far indicates where this body would be located. And I'm curious if there are any electronic, data that's going to be produced to tie Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson too. It's going to be interesting. Text messages, phone calls, recordings. We know those exist. Certainly there's going to be a lot more here, though, I believe, in this case than we saw in the Steve Lawson trial.
Well, remember how quickly the jury convicted Steve Lawson.
They did.
They were out moments.
But I think these attorneys, luckily, have had another year to prepare. And we saw Steve Shoring come out in opening statement and discredit every single thing the prosecutor had to say. And as I've told you, Jim Lisowski is one of the best prosecutors in the game. But Steve Shoring came out and he systematically dismantled and gave an explanation for every single claim that they made.
What was the information load again? The amount? What was it? Gigabytes that they had to go through?
Yeah, it was, I know 200,000 to 400,000 pages. And I believe it was over 200 hours of recordings and videos, 200 to 300 hours, something of that nature.
So has Brian Butler and his team gone through all of that? Do you think they know every inch of it? I
can tell you, personally speaking with Brian, this case has bogged him down for the last 18, 20 months more than any other. The look of stress on his face, every time I see him, I joke, how's it going? And I know he's working.
So let's talk about as this plays out through the week. Tomorrow we're going to head into day 2. Mm-hmm. Who knows what tomorrow brings? Most likely more bombshells. As we stand right now, who's doing the better job?
I think the prosecution came out swinging. They came out strong. They gave a great opening. However, I will say I was surprised at the way Steve Shoring was able to explain not just the big details, the small details, things like the tinted windows on the car. That stuff matters to jurors. And I would say, if we're keeping score here, I think the defense scored a little one up here today.
So the defense is up after day
right
one.
now. After the opening statements and at least what we've heard so far, I think the defense has the edge right now. They did such a great job in opening. And remember, Joseph Lawson's counselors, Robert Boyd, and Kevin, they both made a split-second decision to reserve opening, which, Doug, as I've told you, happens in maybe 1% of the cases where you don't give an opening. But, 95% of the prosecution's opening statement was about Brooks Houck. It wasn't about Joseph Lawson. And Steve Shoring got up and said, hey, not only is Brooks Houck innocent, Joseph Lawson's also innocent, and they felt the need to say, hey, we're going to do more harm than good talking, so we're just going to sit back and see what proof they provide.
We're looking at Joseph Lawson in the orange jumpsuit there. His attorneys didn't give an opening statement. Was that shocking to you? Have you ever seen that happen before?
It was, and just reserving, that is, I have only seen that in one trial I ever had, and I will say the lawyer that did it, he won that trial.
So what's the purpose for it?
Well, a lot of times, you don't want to overpromise something as a defense lawyer. You look like you're lacking credibility or that you're hiding something. So I think because so much of the prosecution's opening focused on Houck, not on Lawson. They decided to say, hey, we're just going to sit back, let this play out, and let all the focus be on Brooks Houck while we kind of skate by.
All right, excellent analysis and work again, Nick Mudd. Thank you very much, Nick, here at the end of day one, giving the check mark, at least the edge, to the defense. But we've got a long way to go, folks. Keep in mind the judge announced in the chambers that this trial expected to go to July 8th. That'd be Tuesday, July 8th. It'll go right up to July 3rd, most likely break for the holiday on Friday, July 4th, and then return for the final days on that Monday, July 7th. Trial resuming tomorrow morning. We'll have coverage throughout the day on WHAS 11 News, and we'll be back here, of course, for you tomorrow night at 9 p.m. for a deep dive on the day's proceedings on WHAS 11+. I'm Doug Proffitt. Thank you very much for watching this special broadcast from WHAS 11 News.